Hello everyone, and welcome back to Scary Dark Narrations. Tonight I bring you a chilling descent into the darkest hours of Halloween night where ancient superstitions awaken, and the veil between our world and the unknown grows dangerously thin. In this episode, you'll experience 7 true tales of terror, drawn from real witnesses who learned too late that the legends whispered on Halloween aren't just stories, they're warnings. These accounts come from people who dared to celebrate the season of the dead and found themselves facing horrors far beyond masks or mischief. From travelers stalked by something wearing a human face that wasn't quite human, to families who opened their doors to the wrong kind of trick-or-treater, to those who learned that some jack-o'-lanterns hide more than just candles inside. The events you are about to hear are not tales spun for fun. They are confessions from those who survived, and echoes from those who never returned. Names and locations have been changed to protect those still haunted, but every chilling detail remains untouched. So turn down the lights, lock your doors, and prepare yourself for a night when the line between the living and the dead disappears completely. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe to Scary Dark Narrations for nightly doses of true horror that will follow you long after the video ends. Hit that notification bell, and let's step together into the darkness where Halloween never truly ends. I still remember that Halloween night, not as a memory, but as something that breathes behind me whenever I close my eyes. I was 12, living in a quiet suburban street in Everett, Washington, where every porch glowed orange with jack-o'-lantern light. The air smelled of damp leaves and pumpkin guts. My best friend Tyler and I thought we owned the night. Candy bags slung over our shoulders, sneakers pounding the pavement, laughter echoing between houses like sparks in the dark. We were kids, invincible, stupid, happy. Until that knock, we started early, sprinting from house to house, until the sky went from gold to bruised purple. Lila wore this cheap zombie mask from the dollar store, the elastic string cutting into his hair. I had an old ghost face costume that barely fit, the sleeves too short, the mask fogging with my breath. It didn't matter. Halloween was about the sugar rush and the thrill of running wild before the cold set in. The street buzzed, kids shouting, candy wrappers crinkling, the far-off sound of laughter layered under the wind. By 9, we were home. My mom kissed my forehead, told us not to stay up too late. No opening the door for anyone, she warned, smiling. It's too late for trick-or-treaters now. Her voice had that tired warmth that made me feel safe. When she went to bed, the house fell into that cozy silence, only broken by old movie dialogue and the hum of the heater. We dumped our candy pile on the floor and hit play on Night of the Living Dead. The screen flickered pale light across the room, shadows moving like they were alive. Outside, the wind howled, scraping the siding, rattling the windows, like the night itself wanted in. About half an hour in, someone knocked. Not loud, but sharp enough to slice through the sound of the TV. 3 knocks. Deliberate. Tyler paused the movie, his zombie mask pushed up on his head. "You expecting someone?" he whispered. "No," I said. "Maybe some late kids." But it didn't sound like a kid's knock. No laughter followed, no rustle of candy bags, just nothing. The silence after each knock hung heavier than the knock itself. I peeked through the blinds. A man stood on the porch, tall, still, wearing jeans and a dark jacket, hands hanging at his sides. No mask, no costume, sunglasses at night, his face half lit by the porch light, pale, hollow, like something unfinished. "Who is it?" Tyler whispered. "I don't know," I said. "He's not holding anything. Maybe he's lost." The man turned his head slowly, scanning our yard as if searching for something he'd dropped. Then, without a word, he walked off down the steps, into the darkness. We both laughed nervously, pretending it was nothing. But my skin crawled. I locked the door, double-checked it, and sat back down. The wind picked up again, scratching across the windows like fingernails. We tried to focus on the movie, but neither of us really watched it anymore. The shadows on the screen bled into the corners of the room. The candy wrappers rustled even when we weren't touching them. Then knock, knock, knock. Louder this time. Tyler froze. I muted the TV. "It's him," he whispered. My pulse hammered so hard it hurt. It crept toward the window, moving slow, the the floorboards groaning under us. I pulled the blinds back just an inch. My breath caught. He was right there, inches away, staring straight at me through the glass. His face was blank, but his eyes burned behind those sunglasses. I dropped the blinds instantly. "He saw me," I whispered. "He saw me." The knocking grew faster, harder. He moved along the house, tapping the windows, dragging something metal across the glass. Tap, tap, tap. "Stop messing with us," Tyler shouted, voice cracking. The sound stopped. For a moment, everything did. Then a bang from the kitchen, another from the back door. He was circling us, testing every way in. My throat went dry. "He's going around the back." Tyler's face went pale. "Wake your mom." Before I could move, the sharp crack of shattering glass exploded through the house. The sound shot through me like electricity. "Oh my God," I breathed. "He's in." We bolted upstairs. My legs barely worked. Tripped once, hit my knee, kept going. "Mom, wake up," I yelled, throwing open her door. She was already sitting up, eyes wide. "What happened?" "Someone broke in," Tyler shouted. He didn't hesitate, grabbed her phone, locked the door, and whispered into it. "Yes." 1128 Oak Ridge Lane. "Someone's in my house." I could hear the dispatcher's calm voice muffled through the phone. I dove under the bed, heart thundering. Tyler followed, both of us shaking so bad the frame creaked. Below us, the house breathed. Every creak of wood sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind felt alive. Then came the real ones, slow, heavy, deliberate. He was inside, and then silence swallowed everything. The silence stretched too long, like the world was holding its breath. My mom whispered, "Don't move." Her voice trembled. From the darkness under the bed, I could see her feet near the door, her hand clutching the phone so tight it shook. The faint blue glow from the screen lit her face, eyes wide, lips moving in prayers I couldn't hear. Then the sound came again. Creak. A step on the stairs. Another. The rhythm of weight pressing on wood, slow, patient, knowing we were up here. Tyler's hand gripped mine, clammy and cold. Neither of us dared breathe. Creak. Creak. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. A long pause. Then the doorknob turned once, twice, rattling, then still. I watched the shadow of the knob twist slightly, heard a faint scraping sound like nails or metal on wood. He was testing it, trying it. My mother covered her mouth to keep from screaming. The air felt thick, heavy with our fear. Every second stretched like it might never end. Then, faintly, the man's voice came through the door, low, raspy, almost curious. "Why'd you lock it?" That's when I realized he hadn't said anything before, not once. Hearing his voice made it real in a way nothing else had. My mom mouthed, "Police are coming." I could hear sirens somewhere far off, the echo bending with the wind, but then tap, tap, tap on the window behind us. I turned slowly, my stomach dropped. His face was there, right outside the second-story window, sunglasses gone. His eyes pale and glassy, unblinking. He smiled, slow and wrong, teeth barely moving. I screamed. The sound shattered the stillness. My mom grabbed the lamp and threw it toward the window. It hit the glass, cracked it, but he was gone. Sirens screamed closer now, lights flashing across the curtains. Somewhere downstairs, a door slammed, the police shouting, heavy boots on tile. My mom yanked us out from under the bed as two officers burst into the room. They swept the house, found the basement window shattered, footprints muddying the laundry room floor, fingerprints smeared across every downstairs window. He'd tried them all. Searching for a way in? One officer stayed with us while the others combed the street. They found nothing, just empty sidewalks and flickering porch lights. Tyler sat silent, staring at the floor. My mom held me close, whispering it was over, but her voice didn't sound convinced. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the hallway light burn through the dark, my mind replaying the sound of his footsteps that whisper through the door. The next morning, they said there were no other reports. No one else saw a man matching his description. It was like he'd vanished. Days passed, then weeks. It stopped going out after dark. Tyler did too. The sound of knocking, even from a movie, made my chest tighten. One night, long after I'd almost convinced myself it was over, I heard something. 3 soft knocks on my window. Knock, knock, knock. I froze, staring at the glass. The curtain swayed slightly from the heater vent. Nothing there, just empty night. I told myself it was the wind. It had to be. But sometimes when the house is quiet, I swear I can still hear it. That same rhythm, soft and deliberate, coming from somewhere down the hall. Sometimes it's closer. Sometimes it sounds like it's inside. Would you dare open the door if it knocked for you? The night air carried a chill that felt sharper than usual, like the cold itself knew what was coming. Halloween had always been my favorite time of year. Masks, chaos, that electric buzz of mischief in the air. But that night, I learned that the scariest masks weren't made of plastic. They were worn by people who smiled too easily and invited you in. It was my first Halloween away from home, freshman year at a big university in Colorado. I'd spent the week juggling classes, late-night ramen runs, and half-broken dreams of fitting in. College had this rhythm, loud, restless, full of faces, pretending not to be lonely. When Saturday rolled around, everyone was talking about parties. I wasn't big on drinking, but staying alone in my dorm sounded worse than a hangover. I threw on a quick costume, suspenders, taped glasses, a caricature of a nerd. My friends, Tyler, and a few others dragged me to a bar near campus. Bass from inside pulsed through the sidewalk, thumping in my chest like a second heartbeat. The bouncer looked at my fake ID for less than a second before shaking his head. "No shot, man. Try again when you're 21. His voice was bored but final. I laughed it off, waved my friends ahead, and stepped back onto the street. The crowd noise faded behind me. For a moment, I just stood there, watching leaves swirl under the flickering streetlights. My phone buzzed. "Luke. Yo, there's this house party on Waverly Street. You trying to go?" "Me? Who's throwing it?" "Luke. IDK man. Friend of a friend. Supposed to be big." Waverly Street wasn't far, a few blocks off campus, where old student rentals leaned like tired ghosts. I hesitated, then shoved my phone into my pocket. "Bet. I'll meet you there." As I walked, the noise of campus slowly dissolved. The air smelled faintly of cold metal and decaying leaves. Pumpkins flickered on porches, their carved faces warped in shadow. I turned the corner and spotted a dimly lit house at the end of the street. A single porch light glowed weakly above the door, and a guy in a football jersey sat on the steps, drinking from a red cup. Luke waved when he saw me. "Yo, this is the spot." The guy on the steps grinned lazily. "You guys here for the party?" "Yeah," Luke said. "I'm Luke, this is Matt." "Cool. Shoes off inside. Just don't trash the place." His name was Reed. That's what he said anyway. Damn! The moment I stepped inside, the air changed. It smelled. Wrong, damp carpet, mold, faint metal. There were way too many shoes by the door, like dozens of people had come in but never left. The music that thumped faintly outside was muffled here, as if the walls were swallowing the sound. "Where is everyone?" I muttered. Luke shrugged. "Maybe out back." We moved through a short hallway. The wallpaper was peeling, and a single light bulb flickered overhead. The next room had a speaker on the floor, music playing, but no people. No laughter, no chatter, no life. Then footsteps, heavy, deliberate. "Yo, Reed," Luke called. 2 men appeared from the hallway. Both wore ski masks. Both carried baseball bats. The taller one pointed his bat at us. Phones, pockets, moved to the kitchen. My throat went dry. The other guy's voice came low, steady. Now, we walked toward the kitchen. My pulse hammered so loud I could barely hear the creaking floor beneath me. There was a single table, a flickering light overhead, and a basement door hanging slightly open, a black slit in the corner. "Go down," the tall one said. Luke's breath caught. "Man, we don't have anything, okay?" The bat slammed against the fridge. Bang. Metal rang through the room like a gunshot. "Go down." I froze. Luke's eyes darted to mine, wide, trembling, desperate.
Ash.
Then he bolted. "Luke, no." The door to the backyard burst open. Cold air rushed in, and suddenly we were both running. Behind us the men shouted. Boots pounded against wood. Something struck my leg. White-hot pain tore through my calf, but I didn't stop. The yard blurred past, garbage bins flying, leaves scattering. My lungs burned. "Keep going, dude," Luke screamed. We didn't stop until the houses changed, until streetlights replaced shadows. I collapsed near the dorm parking lot, gasping, clutching my leg. A deep bruise had already begun to bloom under my jeans. "Holy shit," I breathed. "What the hell was that?" Luke was pale, shaking. They were trying to rob us. Or worse. We called the police. My hands trembled so badly, I could barely hold the phone. When the patrol car finally arrived, the officers took our statements and drove to Waverly Street. I sat in silence as the minutes crawled by. They came back. One of them leaned against the car and said, "House is empty. Nobody there. Looks like it's been vacant for a while." Luke frowned. "What about Reed?" "The guy outside." The officer's face was blank. "There's no one by that name on the lease. Owner lives out of state." Then silence swallowed everything. The silence lingered long after the cops drove away. It felt thick, like something unseen was still watching us. I went back to my dorm that night, leg aching, shirt torn, heart pounding in fragments. But sleep didn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that basement door, the crack of the bat, the way the taller man's voice seemed to calm, rehearsed. By morning, I'd almost convinced myself it was over, just a robbery, a freak encounter. But something in my gut kept twisting, so I did what no sane person should. I went back. The next afternoon, I walked down Waverly Street again. The wind carried that same faint smell of wet leaves and dust. The house stood there. Same porch light. Same peeling paint. Only now, the windows were boarded up. I felt my pulse spike, stepped closer. The boards looked new. It's clean wood against the old frame. Someone had been here recently. I leaned in, peering through a crack, and caught a flicker of light inside. Not sunlight, something dimmer, flickering. My phone buzzed, and I nearly dropped it. It was a text from Luke. "You went back, didn't you?" "Don't. Just don't." I didn't reply. Something about the house held me there, like gravity. Then, from inside, faint music. The same song that had been playing that night. My chest tightened. No way. I pulled out my phone flashlight, angled it through the gap, and saw movement. Not clear, just shadows, several of them. They swayed in slow rhythm, as if dancing. I stumbled back, heart slamming in my throat, and my phone light flickered and went out. Dead battery. That's when the porch light turned off. A low hum began to rise from inside the house. A vibration, almost mechanical. My ears rang. I started backing away, every instinct screaming at me to run. But my leg froze mid-step, like something inside me didn't want to move. And then, a face, pressed against the glass, pale, blank, smiling. My breath hitched. The glass fogged as if it were breathing. I blinked, and it was gone. I ran. I didn't stop running until I reached the main street again. That night I tried to tell Luke what I'd seen. Didn't pick up. I called again and again, nothing. The next morning, his roommate told me Luke never came back after leaving the dorms that evening. His car was still in the lot. His phone went straight to voicemail. The police searched for days. They found nothing. No signs of struggle, no tracks, no witnesses. Just gone. I tried to explain about the house, about the flickering light, the boarded windows, the figure. The officers exchanged looks, scribbled notes, then one of them said, "That property's been condemned for years. Nobody's lived there since 2009. But I saw they didn't care. Days turned into weeks. The bruise on my leg faded, but the dread didn't. I started hearing things at night, faint music, the same bass line echoing from somewhere distant. Sometimes it came from the vents, other times from my phone, even when it was off. Once I woke to find mud on my shoes, the same red dirt from Waverly Street. I don't go near that neighborhood anymore. But sometimes, on Halloween, I swear I still see that porch light flicker on in the distance. And if you listen closely, you can still hear the muffled thump of a party that isn't really there. Would you dare return to this place?
Leave this place.
I still remember that Halloween night in 2005. Not for the candy or costumes, but for the moment everything changed. I was 15, a bored sophomore in Maple Hollow, Ohio. A place where the biggest thrill was whether the high school team would score under the Friday night lights. The air always felt heavy there in late October, thick with the smell of dying leaves and bonfires. That night, I wasn't looking for trouble, just something to make me feel alive. Tyler, Ben, and Casey, my best friends since middle school, were already plotting. Tyler, the loudmouth with too much confidence. Ben, calm and grounded. Casey, unpredictable, but always game. We were too old for trick-or-treating, and too young for parties that actually mattered. So, when Tyler messaged me that afternoon saying, "Abandoned school? Beer fire? You in?" It felt like the perfect middle ground between childish fun and real danger. The plan came from Derek, Chris's older cousin, a guy we all secretly admired. Tattoos, trucks, smokes, and a reputation for never backing down. When Derek said the old Riverside preschool by the river was fair game, we didn't question it. We just grabbed our flashlights and lied to our parents. Except I got delayed. Mom made me take my little brother Eli trick-or-treating first. An hour of fake smiles and candy buckets while my friends waited by the river. By the time I dropped Eli off and sprinted out, the moon was already high. Frost was starting to crawl across the windshields. When I reached the preschool, I could already smell cheap beer and damp ash. The place was a skeleton, walls sagging, graffiti crawling across cracked plaster, a rusted swing set creaking like a ghost trying to breathe. A small fire flickered near the back, casting long, twitching shadows. "Late as hell, dude," Tyler shouted when he saw me. "Yeah, thanks to Mom," I said, catching my breath. "What did I miss?" "Nothing," Derek said, tossing me a smirk. "Except the beer's running low. They told me they'd stashed more behind the fence, in the old house next door." I laughed when Tyler said, "Since you were late, you get to fetch it." I rolled my eyes, grabbed a flashlight, and agreed. It was stupid, sure, but the kind of stupid that felt like a rite of passage. The fence was half collapsed, plastic torn open like an old wound. Beyond it stood the house, smaller than the school, but darker somehow, as if the night itself clung tighter around it. Paint peeled from its siding. Windows gaped like missing eyes. The smell hit before I even reached the porch. Wet wood, mildew, and something metallic underneath. "Yo, you said it's in here, right?" I called out. My voice sounded smaller than I meant it to. Only the wind answered, brushing through the weeds. Inside, the air was stale and damp. My shoes squished on warped floorboards. I passed a half-broken tricycle, a cracked mirror, a child-esque drawing nailed to the wall, a stick-figure family holding hands in front of a house. My skin prickled. Then came the sound. Footsteps. Uneven. Slow. "Tyler," I whispered. My flashlight trembled slightly as I raised it. A figure stumbled out of the hallway, Chris. His face pale, eyes wide with something I'd never seen before, real terror. "Dude," he gasped. "Help me! What the hell happened?" I moved forward, heart hammering. Before I could reach him, he was yanked backward into the darkness, fast, like something had just snatched him. He screamed a single word, torn apart by panic. "Hard." I froze. The echo bounced off the empty walls until it felt like the house was breathing. Then instinct took over. I ran. I tore through the yard, tripped over a half-buried tire, ripped my arm on the fence as I squeezed through. By the time I reached the fire, I was shaking, gasping for breath. "Guys, I shouted, "something's wrong." "Chris," someone grabbed him. They laughed at first. Tyler even threw his head back. "Oh, come on, man, you're serious." "I'm dead serious," I yelled. "He's hurt." He was screaming. The laughter stopped. Derek's face hardened. Without a word, he grabbed his flashlight. "Let's go," he said. We crossed the fence together this time. The air was colder. The moonlight sharper. It felt like we'd stepped into a different world. Then, silence swallowed everything. The house greeted us like it had been waiting. Our flashlights swept across graffiti-covered walls and shattered glass that glittered like frost. The shadows seemed to shift when we weren't looking. "Chris!" Derek shouted. His voice cracked the quiet. A low groan answered. Ben found him first, slumped against the back wall, blood smeared across his face. One shoe missing, his shirt torn. He looked broken. "Holy shit," Tyler whispered. Chris tried to speak, but blood bubbled on his lips. "He's still in here," he croaked. "Who?" Derek knelt beside him. Chris's trembling finger pointed upward. Upstairs. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Derek motioned for me to stay, while he and two others started toward the staircase. Every creak of the steps echoed like gunfire. My heart pounded in rhythm with their boots. I pressed my hoodie against Chris's face, trying to stop the bleeding. "Hang on, man. You're okay. You're okay then." A thud. Something heavy fell upstairs, followed by a dragging sound. Derek's flashlight beam jittered across the ceiling. "There's no one up here," he shouted, but his voice was shaking. Then we all heard it.
"Oh."
A whisper. Soft, male, coming from right above us. The air turned icy. Chris's eyes widened, and he started to cry. "He's right there," he whispered. "He's watching us." That's when the ceiling cracked. Dust rained down. Derek bolted down the stairs, his face white as chalk. "Go. Everyone out." He stumbled into the yard, half falling through the fence, gasping for air. The firelight flickered like it was struggling to stay alive. One of Derek's friends called 911. The sirens came fast, too fast, slicing through the quiet river night. They carried Chris away. The cops searched the place. We waited by the fire, shaking. I remember the reflection of the flashing red lights on the water, like blood spreading downstream. Later, we learned the truth. Someone had been living there, not a ghost, not some legend. A man, local drifter hiding from the law, using the house to store drugs and sleep during the day. They found needles, torn bedding, and a mattress upstairs. He'd been watching the preschool kids for months before it closed down. They never caught him. Weeks passed. Chris recovered, mostly. But he wouldn't talk about what he saw when that man grabbed him. Said the guy's eyes looked wrong, empty, but awake. Every Halloween since then, I've avoided the river. Even now, when the wind shifts, I swear I can still smell that mix of smoke and rot. Sometimes, when I drive past Maple Hollow, I see a flicker of light near the riverbank, faint, like a lantern swaying in the dark. And I wonder, did he ever really leave? Would you dare return to that place? It's strange how a single night can twist everything you know about safety. 2 years later, I still check every window twice, still pause when the wind brushes the glass, like fingers testing the lock. My name's Drew Brooks, 33, husband, father, and until that Halloween, I thought I understood fear. But true fear, it doesn't end when the sun rises. It lingers quiet, patient, waiting for the next sound in the dark. Back then, life was simple. My son Colby had just turned 6, a bright, goofy kid who practically lived in his red and blue Spider-Man costume. He wore it to breakfast, to the store, even to bed once, insisting that heroes never sleep. Kelly, my wife, would laugh as he ran around the living room, shooting imaginary webs at the ceiling fan. We were happy, ordinary. Our neighborhood, a calm pocket on the edge of Springfield, smelled like cinnamon and wet leaves every October. Porch lights glowed pumpkin orange. Kids ran in packs, their laughter echoing down the cul-de-sacs. It was the kind of place you never double-check the door until you have to, that Halloween started like any other. Colby was buzzing with excitement, darting between houses while Kelly and I trailed behind, our breath fogging in the chill. I can still hear the crunch of dry leaves under his sneakers, the distant laughter from another street, the faint hum of Monster Mash playing somewhere. By the time his candy bucket was half full, he was dragging his feet. "Buddy," I said, "you ready to head home?" He nodded reluctantly. "Just one more house?" he asked. I smiled. "All right, champ, one more." We got home a little after 8. The night air had that sharp bite that hints at winter. Kelly's candy bowl on the porch was empty, her handwritten sign, "Take one," lying on the ground. "Miguel," she said, rolling her eyes. Inside, the house felt like a cocoon, fake cobwebs draped across the mantel, candlelight flickering behind orange glass. Colby dumped his candy on the rug, humming as he sorted each piece. Kelly poured a glass of wine. I unlaced my shoes, sinking into the couch. Everything felt perfect, calm, domestic, safe.
Ow.
Then the doorbell rang. It startled me too soon, too loud. Glanced at the clock. Barely a minute had passed since we walked in. Kelly frowned. Who's still out this late? Probably stragglers, I said, standing. But something in her eyes, that small flash of unease, made me hesitate before I opened the door. On the porch stood a man and a little boy. The porch light flickered, throwing their faces in and out of shadow. The man looked mid-30s, thin, with a patchy beard and a plaid jacket that hung loose around his shoulders. The boy beside him wore a Spider-Man costume, the cheap kind from drugstores, his mask torn at the side. "Hey," the man said, polite, almost too polite. "Sorry to bother you, but my kid really needs to use the bathroom. It's a long walk back to our place." My gut twisted. Every instinct told me no, but then the boy shifted, hopping from foot to foot, holding his stomach. He looked miserable, real, not staged. "Please, sir," the man said softly. Kelly stood behind me now, arms crossed, shaking her head. I hesitated, then sighed. "Yeah, sure." Down the hall, first door on the left, the boy darted past me, feet thumping on the hard wood. The man smiled too long, too still. "Thanks," he said. "He's been holding it in since Main Street." "No problem," I replied, forcing a grin. But he didn't move from the entryway. He just stood there, eyes drifting over our family photos, the pumpkin-shaped candy bowl. Then, toward Colby. My stomach tightened. After what felt like forever, the boy came running back, mask still crooked. "All right, let's go," the man said quickly. "Thanks again." I handed the kid a few pieces of candy. "Happy Halloween." The man nodded once, and they disappeared down the sidewalk. I watched until they turned the corner, until the night swallowed them. Kelly exhaled. "I don't like that, Drew. I know," I said. "But it's fine. They're gone." We went about the night as usual, cleaned up, turned off the lights, tucked Colby in. Around midnight, the world was still. I fell asleep to the faint sound of wind brushing the windows. Then, sometime after 1, a scream tore through the silence. "Dad?" Colby's voice, sharp, terrified. I shot up, heart pounding. Kelly gasped beside me. "Colby!" I ran down the hall.
Ow.
He was standing there, shaking, pointing toward his room. "There's a man," he sobbed. "He came in my window." I rushed past him. The curtains flapped wildly in the cold wind, and there, half vanished into the night, was the same man from the porch climbing out the window. "Hey!" I yelled, lunging forward. He dropped to the ground and ran, vanishing across the yard. I tore after him barefoot, the gravel biting my feet, the cold slicing my lungs. I caught one last glimpse of his plaid jacket, disappearing into the woods. Then nothing, just the dark. Kelly burst out of the house, clutching Colby. "What happened?" she cried. "It's him," I gasped. The man from earlier came through the window. Then silence swallowed everything. The police arrived within minutes, flashing red and blue, soaking the walls like a heartbeat. They took statements, dusted the window, combed the woods, but by dawn, he was gone. I remember the detective's face, tired, sympathetic, useless. "We'll find him," he said, but his eyes said otherwise. That night, none of us slept. Colby lay between us, trembling at every creak. I kept the lights on, every single one. When the house went quiet, I could still feel the cold where the man had stood, as if the air itself remembered him. The next few days blurred together. I installed cameras, locks, floodlights. I checked every notification twice. Colby wouldn't go near his window. Couldn't blame him. Kelly tried to act normal, but every time the floorboards creaked, her eyes darted toward the hallway. Our home didn't feel like ours anymore. It felt watched. 3 days later, the detective called. "Mr. Brooks," he said, "we caught the man." My knees nearly buckled. He told me the guy wasn't from our neighborhood. Was a drifter, lived in motels, took odd jobs, moved constantly. My throat tightened. "And the boy?" I asked. There was a pause. "He wasn't his son," the detective said quietly. "He was abducted. A year ago." The man was using him as cover. For a moment I couldn't breathe. The world tilted. The boy, he's alive, the detective said. We reunited him with his family. I hung up and just stood there, staring at the wall. Kelly came over, her face pale. What did he say? I told her everything. The silence afterward was heavier than grief. If I hadn't let that man in, if I'd trusted my gut, maybe none of it would have happened. And worse, what if he hadn't come back for the boy? What if he'd come back for Colby? That thought lives in me. It festers. Weeks passed. Halloween decorations came down. The neighbors' laughter returned, but our house stayed dark. No pumpkins, no lights. Kelly called it paranoia. Maybe it was. Yet some nights, when the air turns sharp and the sky feels too still, I hear it, a faint sound against the window pane. Tap, tap. I tell myself it's just branches. The wind. My mind. Down. I know that sound, deliberate, rhythmic. The same pattern from that night. Sometimes I see a flash of red and blue through the glass, the same torn Spider-Man mask swaying in the dark. I tried ignoring it, tried pretending it was gone. But then, last week, Colby woke up crying again. He's back, he whispered. The man with the boy? I told him it was a nightmare. But when I checked the footage from our front camera the next morning, the feed glitched, static, flicker, and for one frame, I swear I saw them. A tall figure, a smaller one beside him. Both standing by our porch light, both staring straight into the camera. That light burned out later that night. Now, every evening, I sit by the window long after Kelly and Colby are asleep, listening to the quiet. The sound of my own heartbeat, the house breathing, the faint hum of wind dragging through the trees, and sometimes that soft, steady tapping. I tell myself I'm ready this time. But every instinct says I'm not. Would you dare open that door again? The wind scraped across the window like skeletal fingers the night it happened. Halloween had always been quiet for me. No parties, no loud decorations, just a couch, a movie, and a bowl of candy. Maple Hollow wasn't exactly known for excitement, and that was the point. My little house sat at the very end of a cul-de-sac, tucked between trees that always looked darker than they should under the streetlights. I liked that quiet hum of suburban stillness, the laughter of kids fading down the block, the leaves tumbling across the pavement. But that night, the quiet turned wrong. It was around 8 o'clock when I turned off my porch light, the universal signal that Halloween was over. I remember standing at the door, candy bowl still half full, and feeling that odd sense of closure. The porch lights down the street were flicking off one by one, little beacons snuffed out. I set the bowl aside, locked the door, settled into the couch with a beer and the faint sound of Scream 2 playing on the TV. Normal, comforting. Then, 3 knocks, slow, too heavy to be a child's hand. At first I thought maybe I'd forgotten to switch the light back on, and some late kids were hoping for extra candy. But when I opened the door, the man standing there wasn't holding a bucket. He was tall, maybe in his late 40s, pale face almost gray under the porch light. His eyes looked through me, not at me, like he was seeing something past my shoulder. I said, awkwardly lifting the candy bowl. You, looking for someone? He didn't answer. His gaze slid toward the hallway behind me. The air felt suddenly heavier, like the temperature had dropped a few degrees. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, flat, like someone reading a eulogy they didn't believe in. Is Aaron here? Aaron, the name hit oddly. No. You've got the wrong house, I said, forcing a chuckle. No one named Aaron lives here. He didn't blink. He was trick-or-treating, the man murmured. I lost him. I felt that creeping unease crawl up my spine. His tone wasn't grief. It was mechanical, unfeeling. Maybe try a few streets over, I offered. There's a lot of families out that way. He nodded once, slow. Then, as he turned away, he said something that froze me in place. He was wearing a red mask. He walked down the sidewalk, not calling for his son, not looking around, just walking. I stood in the doorway long after he was gone, watching him fade into the darkness. Something in the way he moved. It didn't feel right. I shut the door and locked it, pressing my eye to the peephole. Nothing, just the wind moving the leaves again. Still, my gut wouldn't let it go. I called the local police, told them about the man, his missing son, the way he looked inside my house. The dispatcher's voice was calm, bored even. We'll have a patrol car swing by. If there's no missing child report, there's not much we can do. When I hung up, I turned back toward the TV. The movie had reached the part where the killer hides in plain sight. The reflection of the flashing screen cast shadows across the living room walls, flickering like restless spirits. I told myself I was being paranoid. By the time the credits rolled, the clock read 10:56. The neighborhood outside was silent, every porch dark, every house sealed tight. I got up to shut the blinds and saw something in the reflection. A shape. A face. Someone was standing just outside the window. My breath caught in my throat. I turned quickly, but the space beyond the glass was empty. The yard still, the street deserted, yet I felt watched. I turned off the living room light, hoping the darkness would let me see better. That's when I noticed it, the side gate. It was open. I always closed that gate. Always. The unease turned into real fear. I grabbed my phone, dialing 911 again. My voice shook as I explained what happened. The dispatcher was still mid-sentence when it came a loud crack. The front window splintered in a spider web of fractures, a sound sharp enough to slice the silence in half. I dropped the phone. My heart was slamming against my ribs. Through the broken glass, I saw it just for a heartbeat. A pale face half hidden by the dark. Watching, then gone. "Hey," I yelled, but the word came out thin, shaking. I grabbed the fireplace poker, flicked on the porch light, and moved toward the back door. The cold light revealed movement, a tall figure darting past the fence line wearing dark clothes that swallowed the light. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands trembling too hard to hold the phone steady. The dispatcher's voice bled through the line. "Sir, are you safe?" "Someone tried to break in," I whispered. "He's in my yard." Then silence swallowed everything. When the police arrived, the flashing red and blue lights filled my house like a warning. I stepped outside into the cold, breath fogging in the air. 2 officers moved through my yard with flashlights, beams sweeping over the grass, the fence, the shattered window. The older one crouched and picked something up from the ground, a smooth rock wrapped in a scrap of red fabric. "Looks like it came from a costume," he muttered. "Maybe a mask." My stomach turned to ice. The man's words echoed again. He was wearing a red mask. The cops didn't find anyone. No footprints, no trail, no missing child reports. They left after half an hour, their taillights fading down the street until only the dark was left again. I double-locked every door, every window, and sat awake until dawn, staring at that shattered glass. Days passed. I couldn't sleep. Every small sound twisted my nerves tighter, the floor creaking, the refrigerator hum, even the sigh of the house settling. I installed cameras around the property, but the recordings showed nothing except my own paranoia. Empty driveways, swaying branches, shadows that refused to explain themselves. A week later, one of the officers called. His voice was hesitant. "Listen, we looked into that report. Turns out someone else called about the same thing last year. Just a few blocks away, same description. Guy looking for his son, said his name was Aaron. Kid in a red mask." My mouth went dry. Did they ever find them? He paused. There was no kid, no missing person, just another door knock. That night, I sat in the living room, lights off, TV muted, listening. The silence had weight now, pressing in on me like a thick fog. Around midnight, the wind picked up, carrying the sound of dry leaves scraping against the siding. I tried to ignore it, but then came 3 slow knocks. The same rhythm. My blood froze. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The cameras were rolling, but I couldn't bring myself to check the monitor. The knocks came again, louder. Then a voice low, hollow, distant. "Is Aaron here?" I backed away, phone in hand, whispering into the receiver. "Someone's at my door. He's back." But when I looked through the peephole, there was no one. The porch was empty, till the voice came again, closer now. He was wearing a red mask. My fingers shook so hard I dropped the phone. The power flickered once, twice, then died, plunging the room into blackness. I heard footsteps inside the house, soft and measured. Not outside. Inside. I held the poker tight, backing into the hallway, breath shallow. The sound of slow footsteps moved from the kitchen to the living room. Then they stopped right outside the hall door. I could hear breathing, wet, uneven. The door creaked open. I swung. The metal connected with nothing but air. The hall was empty, yet I felt something brush past my shoulder, cold as the grave. My flashlight flickered on just long enough for me to see it reflected in the glass cabinet, a pale face half hidden behind a torn red mask. And then it was gone. Power surged back on, and the house was exactly as it had been. Quiet, still, except for the front door, wide open, creaking gently in the wind. I ran outside calling for help, but the street was deserted. Every porch light was off except one, the house directly across from mine. In the dim glow of that porch stood a small figure, a child, motionless. A red mask covering his face. He raised his hand and pointed at me. Then the light flickered out. I don't hand out candy anymore. Each October, I shut every blind, turn off every bulb, and wait out the night in silence. But sometimes when the wind moves through the cul-de-sac, I swear I can still hear it. 3 slow knocks, followed by a whisper that chills me to the bone. Is Aaron here? The air that evening tasted like smoke and dying leaves. It clung to the back of my throat as I stepped out of the car, the gravel sighing beneath my boots. The sky was already bruised purple, and the last threads of sunlight stretched thin across the field. Lena's laughter drifted beside me, soft and careless, cutting through the stillness. She'd begged me for weeks to come pumpkin picking. It was our tradition, our little ritual every October since college, and she never let me skip it. I told her we could go anywhere, but she wanted Pine Hollow Farm. Always Pine Hollow. That place had a charm you couldn't fake, old wooden fences, a faded sign, and the faint hum of country quiet. Last year, it felt warm, welcoming. Frank and Maril, the old couple who owned it, treated everyone like family. Frank's voice was gravel and whiskey. Maril's smile could melt frost. She'd hand out cider and tell stories about how they'd kept the farm alive for 50 years. But this year, something about the air felt ... off. Thinner, like the place was breathing shallow. We arrived later than we meant to. The field was empty except for the rows of pumpkins glowing faintly in the dying light. Looks like we've got it to ourselves, I said. Lena smirked, her hair glowing auburn under the sunset. Perfect. No kids. No influencers. Just us. She squeezed my hand, and for a moment, it felt like every other year. Normal. At the booth near the entrance, Maril sat behind a rickety wooden table. She looked ... smaller, her skin pale and loose, her smile trembling around the edges. Frank stood behind her, silent as always, his eyes distant. Well, if it isn't you two again, Meryl said. Her voice shook, but she forced a smile. You came a bit late, huh? The sun's almost gone. Yeah, I said, scratching the back of my neck. Got off work late. Hope you still have some good ones left. Oh, plenty left, she said softly. But her gaze seemed unfocused, like she was looking through me. Then she added, just be careful near the woods. Coyote's been acting strange. Frank cleared his throat. Stick to the open field. Don't wander off. His tone wasn't a warning. It was a plea. Lena chuckled. Got it? We'll behave. She tugged me toward the field. I waved politely, but Maril's eyes followed us until the trees swallowed her from view. The deeper we walked, the quieter it got. The world seemed to muffle itself. No crickets, no birds, not even wind. Just the dull crunch of dead grass beneath our feet. This place feels weird, I muttered. Lena ignored me, kneeling beside a bright orange pumpkin. This one's perfect, she said. Her voice was calm, but her fingers trembled slightly. As I knelt to help her lift it, a sharp crack split the air, a branch snapping. My head jerked toward the woods, the dark wall of trees at the edge of the field. The sound came again, slow, heavy. Lena froze. Did you hear that? Probably just an animal, I said automatically. though my pulse had already started to race. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, pacing the line where shadow met field. "Hello?" called out, squinting toward the tree line. For a moment, nothing. Then movement to shapes. Human. Standing just beyond the last pumpkin row. My breath caught. Someone's there. The figures leaned forward, half hidden behind trunks. I felt the hair on my arms rise. Lena whispered, "Do you see that?" I nodded. The sinking sun caught their faces for just a second, and I nearly dropped the pumpkin. It was Frank and Meryl, or ... it looked like them. Same clothes, same faces. But their skin was gray, waxy, eyes wide, glassy, unblinking. Their mouths curved into frozen smiles that stretched too far. "Frank," my voice cracked. They didn't move, didn't blink. Then slowly both stepped backward, disappearing into the darkness of the trees. Lena's hand dug into my arm. "What the hell was that?" I don't know. The wind picked up suddenly, rushing through the cornstalks beyond the fence. When it stopped, the silence that followed was so deep it hurt. Then, silence swallowed everything. The quiet stretched too long. I could hear my own heartbeat thudding against my ribs. "We should go," Lena whispered. Her voice sounded small, like a child afraid of the dark. We started walking back fast, our boots crunching through the dry grass. The field seemed longer now, the rows endless. Every shadow between the pumpkins looked like it was watching us. I tried to keep calm, but my chest felt tight. "They're probably just messing around," I said. "Old people prank. Maybe stop," she snapped. "You saw their faces?" I didn't answer. The booth came into view, dimly lit by a hanging bulb. But when we reached it, the table was overturned. Meryl's chair lay on its side, one leg broken. The thermos she'd been pouring from earlier was spilled across the dirt, soaking into the ground like blood. "Frank," I called out. My voice echoed down the empty lot. Nothing, not even wind now. Lena grabbed my arm. "Please. Let's just leave." We ran. The air felt thick, syrupy, as if the world itself didn't want us to move. My car keys slipped from my hands twice before I got the door open. As I started the engine, Lena gasped and pointed. The edge of the road, illuminated by my headlights, stood two figures, side by side. Frank and Meryl, their heads tilted at the same eerie angle, those same stretched smiles. My hand froze on the steering wheel. For a second, I thought they were mannequins, until both raised their arms in perfect unison and pointed toward us. "Go!" Lena screamed. The tires screeched against the gravel. I didn't stop until we hit the main road. Even then, I kept glancing at the rearview mirror, half expecting to see them walking behind us. But the road was empty, swallowed by night. We didn't talk the whole drive home. The silence felt heavier than any scream. That night, Lena locked every window, every door, double-checking the deadbolts. I told her maybe it was all some twisted joke, but the words sounded hollow. The next morning, the unease hadn't faded. It clung to everything. The coffee tasted bitter, the sunlight too cold. I called the number listed for Pine Hollow Farm. It rang twice, then disconnected. Their website? Gone? Even the Google Maps pin had vanished. A few days later, Lena found something. She sat on the couch, pale, holding her phone. "You need to see this," she said. The headline made my stomach turn. Bodies of elderly couple found in woods near Millersburg. Frank and Meryl Hennon presumed dead for nearly a week before discovery. The date of death, October 10th. We'd been there on October 13th. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The reality didn't fit in my head. The faces in the woods, the way they moved, the smiles. That night I barely slept. Around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of gravel crunching outside our apartment. Slow, steady footsteps. I told myself it was nothing. Wind, a stray cat, anything. But when I pulled the blinds aside, there they were. Two figures at the edge of the street. Heads tilted, grinning, my breath caught. I blinked and they were gone. Now, every fall, when I see a pumpkin stand on the side of the road, that same chill crawls down my spine. Sometimes I swear I can smell cider and wood smoke, even in the city. Sometimes I wake up certain someone's standing outside my window. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's something else. But every October, as the air cools and the leaves turn, I hear their voices whispering through the night, soft, cracked, like laughter on the wind. Would you dare go back to Pine Hollow Farm? The first thing I remember is the sound of rain against my mother's window. Slow, deliberate, like fingers tapping from somewhere outside the dark. The air smelled of damp wood and tea leaves, and the old clock on the mantel ticked too loudly. I was 26, sitting across from my mom in her living room, and for the first time she looked smaller than I remembered. Her hands trembled as she cupped her mug, the steam rising between us like a ghost. I never understood why she hated Halloween so much, but that night, I finally asked. She didn't smile the way she usually did when she brushed off hard questions. Her eyes drifted toward the window, where the street light glowed through the rain. Then she said softly, "Ben, promise me you'll never go near Willow Street on Halloween night." I laughed at first. "Mom, that street's abandoned." "Why promise me?" she snapped, and her voice cracked halfway through. The sound froze something in my chest. I nodded, and for a long moment she didn't speak. Then, in a voice so low, I could barely hear it, she said, "I guess it's time you knew." She told me she grew up in Ridgefield, Wisconsin, a small, cold town near Milwaukee. Back then, it was 1978 and she was 9 years old. She described the smell of wood smoke, the sound of leaves crunching under their shoes, and the excitement of wearing her Minnie Mouse costume her mother had sewn by hand. Her sister was Daisy Duck. Her little brother Tommy was Mickey. Her father walked behind them, cigarette glowing orange in the dark. Everything felt perfect, she said, until they turned onto Willow Street. That street had always felt wrong. Even her dad admitted he didn't like passing it. But that night, the porch light of the last house was glowing. It belonged to a man named Mr. Hartley, pale, bald, with eyes that never blinked. He lived alone, and kids whispered stories about him in the schoolyard. But her dad said, "Come on, one last stop," so they went. Before they even knocked, the door creaked open. Mr. Hartley stood there, smiling too wide. The smell that drifted from inside was metallic and sweet. He reached into a big ceramic bowl and dropped candy into each of their bags. Small foil-wrapped pieces, heavier than they looked. "Happy Halloween," he rasped. His voice was rough, like sandpaper against glass. Tommy whispered that he smelled funny. Her dad just chuckled and thanked the man. They walked away, and Linda remembered how the fog seemed to thicken as they reached the sidewalk. That's when they heard it. A group of older kids running down the street, laughing, tearing open candy. One boy stopped under the streetlight. He froze, hand pressed to his mouth. Then came the sound, a horrible, wet cough. At first they thought he was choking. But then blood splattered across his costume, bright under the orange light. The boy gagged again, and something dark hit the pavement. Her mom said she thought it was chocolate until she realized it was pieces of flesh. Her dad dropped his cigarette and ran forward, shouting for help. The street filled with screams. A girl in a princess dress was vomiting blood. Another boy clawed at his throat, choking on candy that wasn't candy at all. Linda turned and saw red dripping down her little brother's chin. "Daddy, help him!" she screamed. Her father grabbed Tommy, but the blood kept coming, thick and steady. It soaked into his Mickey Mouse costume, into her father's hands, into the grass. Linda said she could still smell it after all these years. And when she looked up, Mr. Hartley was sitting in his rocking chair, smoking his pipe, watching, laughing. "The end is coming, children," he shouted. "The end is coming." Then silence swallowed everything. It was broken by sirens, distant at first, then growing louder, piercing through the chaos. Her father ran toward Hartley's porch, shouting, "What did you do?" Hartley only smiled, his teeth glinting in the light. "You'll all see," he said. "Candy cleanses them." When the police arrived, the street was littered with dropped bags, masks, and bodies. The flashing red and blue lights turned the fog into a nightmare painting. Her father was screaming for help, clutching Tommy as paramedics rushed in. Somewhere behind them, gunfire cracked through the night. Mr. Hartley fell forward, pipe tumbling from his mouth. Mom's voice faltered when she said that was the last time she ever saw him alive. The doctors said Tommy had swallowed tiny fragments of metal razor blades hidden inside the chocolate. They tore through his tongue and throat. He'd survived, but could barely speak for months. Even now, decades later, his voice carries a faint slur. He doesn't remember that night, she said. but I do. Police searched Hartley's home the next morning. They found boxes of candy, each one laced with razors, hundreds of Polaroid photos of neighborhood kids, and jars filled with something they couldn't identify. Some said it looked like ground metal. Others swore it was something else. They burned the house to the ground a week later, but nobody could explain the smell that lingered for months like burnt sugar and rust. When she finished her story, the rain outside had turned heavier, thudding against the windows. I sat there, speechless. My mother stared into the dark, eyes distant. Every Halloween, she whispered, I see their faces. I hear their screams. Sometimes I still hear him laughing. I didn't know what to say. I reached out and held her hand. It felt cold. A soft noise came from outside, faint, like a giggle. Probably just trick-or-treaters, but Mom's face went white. She turned to the window and whispered, Sometimes I swear. I can still hear them. That night, driving home, I couldn't shake it from my mind. The rain followed me all the way to Maple Hollow. When I turned onto Willow Street, or where it used to be, I slowed down. The house was gone now, replaced by a stretch of empty land. Nothing but weeds and broken stones. But as my headlights swept across the lot, I saw something. Figure. Small, standing perfectly still near the middle of the field. It was wearing a Minnie Mouse costume. My heart slammed against my ribs. I blinked and it was gone, just wind pushing through the tall grass. Still, I could have sworn I saw something glint near the ground. Something metallic, like a piece of foil or a razor. Told myself not to stop, not to look. But as I drove past, the radio flickered, static. Then a faint voice whispering through the noise, Happy Halloween. The car lights dimmed for a second. The static grew louder. And just before it all cut out, I swear I heard it a low, rasping laugh, somewhere in the dark, echoing through the rain. Would you dare return to that street?